The old postman's horse stood alone in the town square at dawn, steam rising from her nostrils in the freezing air, the postal bag still strapped to her saddle, completely empty. And when the village constable approached to check on the animal that had been missing for 2 days during the worst blizzard in 50 years, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The leather bag wasn't just empty, it had been systematically emptied, one letter at a time, because scattered across 15 kilometers of snow-covered routes, in every single mailbox along the postman's usual path, residents were waking up to find their mail delivered despite the storm, despite the roads being impassable, despite the fact that the postman himself had been found frozen to death 2 miles outside town 48 hours earlier. And the only possible explanation was standing right there in the square, exhausted, frost-covered, and waiting patiently for a man who would never return. Because the horse had done something that defied every logical explanation. She had completed the route alone, delivered every piece of mail, and come back to the exact spot where she and Thomas Hayes had started their rounds together every morning for the past 12 years, proving that some creatures understand duty in ways that go far beyond training or instinct or even survival. And as the constable stood there, looking at this loyal animal who had walked through a blizzard that killed 3 people just to finish a job that no longer mattered to anyone except her, he realized he was witnessing something that would be talked about in this small Yorkshire village for generations. A story of loyalty so pure, it bordered on the impossible. And all he could do was whisper, "Good girl, Duchess. You brought him home, didn't you?" Even though Thomas Hayes was already dead and buried. Because in the horse's mind, the job wasn't finished until she returned to their starting point, until she completed the sacred routine that had defined her entire adult life, until she proved that duty doesn't end just because the one who taught you duty is gone. Hikayemize geçmeden önce beğenmeyi ve abone olmayı unutmayın. Gerçekten merak ediyorum. Bizi dünyanın neresinden izliyorsunuz? Ülkenizi yorumlara yazın. The Last Ride Stories ailesinin ne kadar uzağa ulaştığını görmeyi seviyorum. The village of Thornfield sat in a valley where winter came early and stayed late, where November brought snow that wouldn't melt until April, and where the postal service was quite literally a lifeline, the only connection many of the elderly residents had to the outside world. And for 12 years, that lifeline had been maintained by Thomas Hayes, a 63-year-old postman who had walked the same 15-kilometer route 6 days a week with a dedication that bordered on religious devotion. And by his side, always, was Duchess, a sturdy Dales pony with a thick winter coat the color of dark chocolate and eyes that seemed to understand the importance of the work they did together. Thomas had bought Duchess as a 3-year-old when the postal service still used horses for the more remote routes, and he trained her not just to carry the mail bags, but to be his partner, his companion, his reason for getting up at 5 in the morning, even when his arthritis made every step painful. And over the years, they had developed a routine so precise you could set your watch by it, leaving the post office at 6:30, stopping at Mrs. Morrison's cottage first because she was 92, and watched for them from her window. Then the Jacobson farm, then the shepherd's hut up on the ridge, then down through the valley, hitting 12 more stops before circling back to town by noon. And Duchess knew every stop, knew which gates squeaked, knew which dogs would bark, knew to wait patiently while Thomas chatted with the lonely widows who treasured his daily visits almost as much as the letters he brought. The villagers loved them both, would leave sugar cubes in their mailboxes for Duchess, would invite Thomas in for tea on the coldest mornings, and there was something beautiful about the relationship between the old postman and his horse, the way they moved together like parts of the same organism, the way Thomas would rest his hand on her neck and say, "Just us against the weather, girl," and the way Duchess would nick her softly, as if agreeing, and nobody watching them could doubt that this was more than just a man and his workhorse. This was partnership built over thousands of miles and thousands of deliveries and countless mornings when they were the only souls moving through the frozen landscape. bringing connection to people who had nothing else. The blizzard hit on a Tuesday in late November, with a ferocity that caught everyone off guard. The weather service had predicted snow, but nothing like what actually came. Within 2 hours, the village was buried under 3 feet of powder, with drifts twice that height. Visibility dropped to nearly zero, and the temperature plummeted to -15°C. Conditions so dangerous that the Postal Service officially canceled all deliveries and told Thomas to stay home. But Thomas Hayes, who had only missed work twice in 12 years, both times for his wife's funeral and his daughter's wedding, looked at the calendar and saw that it was pension day, which meant half his elderly customers were expecting checks they desperately needed. And he made a decision that would cost him his life. His daughter Sarah had begged him not to go. "Dad, it's not worth it. People will understand. Nobody expects you to risk your life for mail." But Thomas had pulled on his heaviest coat and said something that would haunt her forever. "Duchess and I have never let them down, and we're not starting now. Mrs. Morrison needs her pension check. She's got nothing in the house. We'll do the route quick and be back before the worst hits." And Sarah watched from the window as her father led Duchess out of the barn, loaded the postal bags, and disappeared into the swirling white. And that was the last time anyone saw Thomas Hayes alive. What happened next had to be pieced together from tracks in the snow and the postman's final deliveries. Thomas and Duchess had made it through the first half of the route despite the worsening conditions, stopping at each house, leaving mail in boxes, the horse plowing through drifts that came up to her chest, while Thomas held onto her saddle for balance. And witnesses later reported seeing them around 9 a.m. near the Jacobson farm, both covered in snow, but still moving steadily, still completing the job. But somewhere around the 10th stop, probably around 10:30, based on the coroner's report, Thomas Hayes suffered a massive heart attack. The combination of extreme cold, physical exertion, and his pre-existing heart condition, creating a perfect storm that stopped his heart in seconds, and he fell from Duchess's back into a snowdrift 2 miles from town, dying almost instantly. And that should have been where the story ended. A tragic tale of a dedicated postman who died doing his duty. But Duchess, standing over her fallen master in the middle of a blizzard that was getting worse by the minute, did something that nobody could have predicted. Something that spoke to a bond deeper than training, deeper than habit, deeper than anything humans typically give animals credit for understanding. The search party found Thomas's body 48 hours later, when the storm finally broke and the snow stopped. He was buried under 2 feet of fresh powder in a ditch about 2 miles from Thornfield. And the discovery brought the expected grief. The village had lost a beloved member of the community, a man who had served them faithfully for over a decade. But there was also a mystery that nobody could explain, because Duchess was missing. The horse hadn't returned home, hadn't been seen since Thomas left on Tuesday morning, and there were fears that she too had perished in the storm, perhaps wandered off and frozen somewhere in the vast moorland that surrounded the village. But then, on the 3rd morning after the blizzard, a farmer doing his rounds noticed something odd. There were hoof prints in the snow, leading away from where Thomas's body had been found. And those prints led directly to the first house on the postal route, Mrs. Morrison's cottage. And when the constable followed the trail, what he discovered made him question everything he thought he understood about animal intelligence and loyalty. Mrs. Morrison's mailbox, which should have been empty because deliveries had been canceled, contained her pension check and 2 letters, all properly delivered, all placed neatly in the box despite the fact that the postman had been dead for nearly 3 days. And the constable, confused, followed the hoof prints to the next house on the route, the Jacobson farm, where he found the same thing, mail delivered, placed in the box, the postal bag's contents distributed exactly as they should have been. And house after house, stop after stop, for the entire 15-kilometer route, Duchess had delivered every single piece of mail. She had completed Thomas Hayes's final route without him, walking through a blizzard that had killed 3 people, navigating roads that were completely buried in snow, finding mailboxes that were invisible under drifts. And she had done it in the correct order, following the exact sequence that she and Thomas had followed 6 days a week for 12 years. Never missing a house, never leaving mail at the wrong address, working with the precision that suggested she understood not just where to go, but why it mattered. And when the constable finally tracked her down, Duchess was standing in the town square, in the exact spot where she and Thomas had always started their morning routes, the postal bag completely empty, waiting patiently for a man who would never come. And the constable, a hardened man who had seen plenty of death in his career, found himself crying as he approached the exhausted horse, because he was looking at something that defied explanation, a creature who had performed an act of loyalty so profound that it seemed almost supernatural, who had prioritized completing a dead man's duty over her own survival, who had navigated impossible conditions to ensure that elderly residents received pension checks that meant the difference between eating and going hungry. And all because she had been taught 12 years ago that this was the job, this was the route, this was what they did together every morning, and even death couldn't change that. The village of Thornfield held a funeral for Thomas Hayes that brought out every resident, and Duchess walked at the front of the procession, led by Sarah, who had insisted that her father's partner deserved the place of honor. And as the coffin was lowered into the frozen ground, the horse did something that broke every heart present. She whinnied, a long, mournful sound that echoed across the cemetery like a question that would never be answered. And Sarah, crying harder than she'd cried since losing her mother, rested her hand on Duchess's neck and said, "He loved you so much, girl. You were the best partner he could have asked for. And what you did, completing that route, bringing him home in your own way, that was the greatest gift you could have given him, because he died doing what he loved, with the one he loved most beside him. And you made sure his last job was finished. You made sure nobody went without their mail. And Dad would be so proud of you." And the horse, as if understanding, lowered her head and stood perfectly still while the service continued. The story of Duchess's impossible delivery spread far beyond Thornfield. Newspapers picked it up. National radio covered it. Animal behaviorists debated how a horse could have navigated a blizzard and completed a complex route without human guidance. Some argued it was pure instinct and routine. Others suggested a level of cognitive understanding that challenged conventional wisdom about animal intelligence. But the people of Thornfield didn't need expert analysis to understand what had happened. They had seen the bond between Thomas and Duchess, had watched them work together for 12 years, had witnessed the daily partnership that was built on more than just training. It was built on trust and companionship and a shared sense of purpose. And when that purpose was tested by the ultimate tragedy, when death tried to leave the job unfinished, Duchess had proven that some bonds create obligations that transcend mortality. That loyalty isn't just about being present when things are good. It's about finishing what was started, even when the one who started it is gone. Sarah Hayes retired Duchess to a paddock behind her house, where the horse lived out her remaining years in comfort. And every morning at 6:30, like clockwork, Duchess would stand at the gate facing town, ears forward, waiting for a routine that would never resume. And Sarah would bring her a sugar cube and say, "Not today, girl, not today." But she never tried to break the habit, because she understood that Duchess wasn't just remembering Thomas, she was honoring him, keeping alive the partnership that had defined both their lives. And when Duchess finally passed away 7 years later, at the age of 26, the entire village attended her burial, placing her grave next to Thomas's in the town cemetery, an honor never before given to an animal in Thornfield's 300-year history. And on the shared headstone, they placed an inscription that read, Thomas Hayes, Postman, and Duchess, his loyal partner. Together, they delivered more than mail. They delivered hope. Together, they proved that duty and love are sometimes the same thing. Together, they showed us that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear horseshoes. And beneath that, the line that had become the village's unofficial motto, inspired by one horse's impossible act of loyalty. Some journeys must be completed, even if we must complete them alone. This story teaches us that duty isn't just about following rules or completing tasks. It's about understanding that our actions matter to others, that the work we do connects to real people with real needs, and that sometimes the most profound act of love is simply finishing what we started, honoring commitments even when circumstances make it difficult, even when personal cost is high. Thomas Hayes could have stayed home that day. Everyone would have understood. Nobody would have blamed him for choosing safety over service. But he understood something that modern society often forgets, that reliability matters, that showing up matters, that being someone others can count on creates a web of trust that holds communities together. And Duchess, who had absorbed this lesson through 12 years of daily routine, demonstrated that loyalty isn't a human-exclusive trait, that animals can understand obligation and partnership and the importance of completing what was begun. Could have sought shelter when the blizzard hit, could have returned home when Thomas fell, could have prioritized her own survival over an abstract concept like duty. But she didn't, because her bond with Thomas had taught her that the work mattered, that the people waiting for their mail mattered, that finishing the route was part of who she was. And in that understanding, in that impossible journey through the storm, she showed us something beautiful and terrible and utterly true about the nature of love and partnership. That real loyalty means carrying on when carrying on seems impossible. That real devotion means honoring the absent as faithfully as we honored them when they were present. That real partnership doesn't end with death. It transforms into memory, into habit, into a daily ritual that says, I remember, I honor, I continue what we built together. And perhaps that's the deepest lesson of all, that we are shaped by our partnerships, defined by our commitments, made real by the routines we keep and the promises we honor. And when we find someone, whether human or animal, who understands that duty and love are two names for the same thing, who will walk through blizzards to keep a promise, who will complete the journey even when the one who began it beside them is gone, we should hold on to them, honor them, learn from them, because they are teaching us what it means to be truly loyal, truly committed, truly worthy of the trust others place in us. And Duchess, a simple postal horse from a forgotten Yorkshire village, taught an entire community this lesson through one impossible act of devotion, proving once and for all that heroes don't always arrive with fanfare or recognition or even conscious choice. Sometimes heroes arrive quietly, carrying letters through the snow, completing routes that no longer have a purpose except to honor the memory of the one who taught them that purpose matters, that duty matters, that love expressed through action is the only love that truly counts. And in doing so, they show us not just who they are, but who we could be, if only we had their courage, their loyalty, their unshakable commitment to finishing what we start, no matter the cost, no matter the obstacles, no matter how alone we find ourselves on the journey. Where are you watching from? Have you ever known an animal who showed loyalty that seemed to transcend training or instinct? Have you ever completed something difficult simply because someone you loved would have wanted you to finish it? Share your story in the comments below, Because Duchess's tale reminds us that we all carry routes that need completing, duties that need honoring, partnerships that continue even when one partner is gone. And sometimes the greatest tribute we can pay to those we've lost is simply to keep walking the path they showed us. Keep honoring the commitments they taught us mattered. Keep proving that what we built together wasn't dependent on both of us being present. It was dependent on both of us understanding that some things are bigger than ourselves. Some responsibilities transcend our personal circumstances. Some loves are so deep that they become duties. And some duties are so faithfully performed that they become love. And in that intersection, in that sacred space where partnership and purpose meet, we find the truest expression of what it means to be loyal, to be devoted, to be worthy of the trust that others place in us. And that's what Duchess proved on that impossible journey through the blizzard. That's what she showed the world when she delivered those letters alone. That's what she taught a village and eventually taught all of us. That some heroes arrive on hooves, carrying mail and memories, completing routes that go far beyond geography, journeys of the heart that never truly end, as long as someone remembers to keep walking, keep delivering, keep honoring the partnership that made them who they are. And in the end, isn't that what all of us hope for? To be remembered not for grand gestures, but for faithfulness, not for moments of heroism, but for daily dedication, not for what we achieved when it was easy, but for what we completed when it was impossible. Because that's when character is revealed. That's when love is proven. That's when we show the world what we're really made of. And Duchess, bless her loyal heart, showed us all exactly that. One impossible delivery at a time.